Eva, it's great to have you today. Can you pronounce your full name so we get it all? I don't want to mispronounce anything.
Eva Yazhari.
Yazhari. That's a cool name.
Yazhari. Thank you.
All right, Eva. Yeah. So you're a YPOer, I see, and engaged in a lot of the YPO stuff. It's a blast, isn't it?
It is. It's all consuming in a very, very good way.
It really is. I mean, if you get involved and you start to lead in YPO, you end up leading a lot of stuff and you've been asked to lead more, right?
That's true. I'm on the executive committee of the Personal Investing Network, and I can already see it coming. But it's fun, and you get to meet great people.
Yeah, I've gotten involved in the construction network, in the real estate network a little bit, and then the entrepreneurship network a little bit as well. So it's been a lot of fun. People we meet are just incredible. Usually, striving to lead the markets they serve, right? And it's so much fun because when you can be a totally different industry, talking to somebody that's again, and we talk to a lot of them through our podcast. The sandwich guy, Jimmy John, our friend, right? Listening to him, you can come up with a lot of different things in your own mind for your own industry to lead as well, right? I mean, when we talk to these people that are leading in all different aspects of business, it's fun, the commonality really that you come to. You've been serving totally different customers, totally different stuff, right? So it's been a blast to be part of YPO for me. And you couldn't be in YPO very long because you're like 20 years old. So how long have you been in YPO?
Since 2011.
All right, so 9 years. All right, so I've been on board I think since 2004. It's been a blast. So all right, Eva. So we like to find out about where a person where you come from culturally and what shaped your mind to become the leader you are today, and where you are today and where you're going tomorrow, and what you aspire to be future, right? So that's kind of what we want to dive into. And I've seen a lot about read up on you and stuff, and heard a lot of your story. It's really cool. But we like to be told by you and in your way, and then start a little further back. Where you came from with your parents, who sounds like were kind of artists and stuff, right? They're into art and all that. If you could start all the way back to as a kid, what created this awesome person that Eva is today?
Thank you. That's very kind of you. So go ahead.
One more thing. We do have Robbie on the line too. Sorry about that. Robbie, introduce yourself. Robbie's a leader for us in our company, a young aspiring executive that's just a wealth of knowledge for a young guy, as well as very inquisitive. So I like the other younger generation to be part of these Q&As, so that we get more than my perspective, Eva. So Robbie, introduce yourself, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, Eva. I know we had a chance to chat for a few seconds just before jumping on the official podcast, but no, we're beyond excited to have you today, and ironic beyond. And the team that I was actually on just before joining the group of companies that Gary helps own and manage, I was at LinkedIn on our nonprofit team, and so I was specifically helping nonprofits across the U.S. and Canada better leverage LinkedIn for hiring, marketing, selling, and learning. And so your background interests me definitely. I can take it to heart a lot, so I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good. I didn't actually know that team existed, so it's really good to know about. So thanks so much for that question about my background. I'm a New York City girl. I was born in Manhattan. My parents are from the Midwest, and they moved to New York City in the 1970s because they are working artists, and they wanted to be in a more creative mind space and also community. And so, I mean, the stories that they told me of filming videos on the New York City subway and blowing up big balloons for art video installations in a subway car full of people and things like that are just wild. They also lived in New York at the time where you could have a very, very, very large loft for very little money. So it was a different world then. But that was my upbringing. I went to Catholic school. I actually went to a New York City public high school, and then I ended up at Barnard, which is Columbia's all-girls school, and I studied mathematics. I think I'm an only child. I was always very precocious, always kind of a part of the conversation with my parents. And a couple things really shaped me in my upbringing. One of them was that my paternal grandfather started a health clinic in Tanzania in the 1950s and moved his entire family over to Africa and lived there for over a decade, as well as adopted a young daughter whose mother died in childbirth as well, who's an aunt of mine that lives in the Bay Area and has grown her own family. And that was something that really shaped my thinking, the possibility of thinking beyond my backyard, so to speak, that being combined with extremely diverse upbringing in New York City. And then there was also a member of my family who was very involved in politics and social justice work. And so that was a topic of conversation. I mean, I remember talking about the North America Free Trade Agreement at our dinner table when I was a little girl. And so sometimes I thought it was boring, but it definitely got in there. And I think has become one of my core values. But, like any child, I had a good amount of fun and got to do silly things growing up. So it's kind of a very, I would say, normal urban upbringing.
Any brothers and sisters?
No, just me.
All right.
Yeah. Awesome.
A lot of attention then.
Yes, a lot of attention. And I was treated like an adult. I think my parents were very clear that they wanted to work on their art and that they decided to have one child for a specific purpose. And they kind of took me around like I was another one of the group.
I've seen that before. I had friends of mine with one child, or friends of mine that are the only child, and they grow up fast, and they seem to mature super fast because they are like an adult, right? They're around adults, and they're not they don't have a sibling to hang out with all the time. They might be younger, kind of pulling them back or whatever, right? When it comes to maturity, so that's interesting. And they were traveling then, or they're just like going to fairs, or what? When you say you like kind of hung out with them and all that, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was mostly spending time at galleries and openings in New York City, and with their friends who were also often artists. Typically, when you're a working artist, you have another job. And so my mother was a graphic designer in the old days when everything was done by hand, and then transferred over to the computer. And my father started out as an art therapist and became an art teacher. And the communities of people around these types of jobs were also very creative. So they had friends who had a show in Brooklyn, or they had friends who had a opening in Chelsea. And I would be dragged around to all of these openings. And it's a big part of my upbringing, really like seeing art. And I had probably, 10, 12 years of my life where I wasn't really interested in the art world. But when I kind of approached my 20s, it really was solidified as like an important part of my life. And I got to expand out my interest and also become a small collector on my own. But I think because of these early days of being, as I would say, dragged around to openings, and there were never any kids there, and I was always asking for other kids. But I really was able to develop a sense of what I like and an aesthetic. And so, even recently, because I now live in Dallas, Texas, going down to Marfa, which is really where Donald Judd, one of the more kind of famous American artists, had established large bodies of work. That feeling that he created, that he also created in New York City, was very, very present for me. So I think there's something got deep when it came to the art world.
What type of art is that?
So Donald Judd is a sculptor. And he works a lot with geometric shapes. And typically you'll see his works as kind of like a lot of rectangular shapes and boxes. And in Marfa, he's been able to take warehouses of old World War II prison camps, prisoner of war camps, and just make full installations or a full installation out in kind of the desert with the tumbleweed going by. It's truly incredible.
Wow, I got to see that when I go down there next time. So how far is that from Dallas?
10 hours.
10 hours. So it's
You
way...
have to fly. Yeah, you can fly to El Paso or Midland.
Okay. That sounds interesting to see. Mm-hmm. Okay, so where did that go? And then in your 20s, what did you do? Like, you went to what schools? What schools did you go to? What degrees did you search out and get? Tell us about that.
I started out at Barnard as pre-med. Speaking very, very vulnerably, I actually actively decided to go to a New York City public school, and I graduated 14th in my class out of thousands of students, but it was frankly not a quality education. And I say that with a lot of sympathy for those who didn't have additional resources. So my parents, they were artists, but they were really good at curating experiences for me. So, for example, when I was in high school, I studied abroad in Budapest in Hungary, and we had an exchange program through the Ronald Lauder Foundation. And I also was a page in the House of Representatives. So I got to be with other kids from different educational backgrounds. And I think it really helped to elevate my experience. But just at a basic level, I was not prepared for college. So when I entered the pre-med track, it was extremely competitive. And I'm actually not a really competitive person. So it was a bit of a turnoff, and I kind of looked at a fork in the road and decided to actually go in a different direction and pursue a degree in mathematics. So I have a degree in math, like a bachelor's degree in math, and briefly thought about going the PhD route, but it is a very solitary pursuit.
Sure.
It's very all day long, focused on math. It's a whole other language. But I think what it really taught me was a pattern recognition and quantitative training that I brought into the world of finance, which is where I started out my career. So it's very funny. A friend of mine, I was involved with a club at Columbia University, and a friend of mine in that club came to me one day and she said, "Oh, my boyfriend works at Merrill Lynch in investment banking. They're looking for night investment bankers. Are you interested?" Well, sure. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm a math major. That seems like it might be congruous with finance. And so I applied. I actually met some people that I'm still in touch with today. And one of my board members, it was one of my first interviewers, and got this job. And I was basically making copies and doing PowerPoint. But it kind of opened my eyes to the world of banking. And frankly, I realized that was not for me. And so I kind of leveraged some connections to be able to move into the hedge fund industry and work at a fund of hedge funds, which is where I started working when I actually graduated. So I started there while I was in college, was an instrumental member of a very small team that built a fund from 200 million to 5 billion. And then when I left, they kind of grew and expanded even beyond the financial crisis. But I worked at a fund of hedge funds and was lucky to be assigned the activist hedge fund managers as kind of the group that I was monitoring as a part of the investment team. And that was really eye-opening for me to talk to Carl Icahn across the table, or speak to Bill Ackman, and have visibility into this world of change and how money can have change. And I think it really influenced me, despite the fact that those managers are not focused on social change, but really helped me think about the ability for money to be more than just financial return.
Awesome. And who are did you have any mentors, people that you loved working for back then, that actually took your mind to a different place, and that during your 20s, let's say?
I'm going to be really honest and say that I don't think Wall Street's very good at mentoring women, and And so that was a challenge for me. It was something that I was really looking for and seeking out. I think I learned the most. I learned the most from the partner of my firm. I mean, he's an entrepreneurial guy, just incredible. And everything he did was very entrepreneurial in the world of finance. And I think that that's not always the case. I mean, we see big banks and institutions and they have their processes and procedures, and that's kind of the way that they operate, of course, because of regulation and the need to be responsible and things like that. And Greg Heimowitz was very ethical, took his role as being a steward of pension capital extremely seriously, but at the same time had a vision for what his firm could be that went beyond, I think, what other fund managers thought about their kind of universe of how they could grow and scale. So in an informal way, he was a mentor to me. But you could imagine like a busy partner, you don't always get as much time as you would like. But I everything I do now is basically linked to something that I learned from him, for the most part. And then so I did seek out a lot of mentors, but I think in the second phase, or like the second life of my career as an impact investor, that's where I really got to know people who were genuinely kind of taking their arm around me and saying, like, here are some things that you might want to think about or know. And frankly, I think YPO has been really good for that as well. I've met some people who have really taught me a lot.
Awesome. And so when did you go from working within the hedge fund to the next phase of your career?
In 2009, 2008 actually, I watched the market crash, and actually was in the transition to get married, and my husband and I were living in different places and looking at how to combine our lives. And so I decided to move to Zurich, where he was based. He's Iranian and he's British, and he was the general counsel of of Gate Gourmet, the airline catering business. And so at the time, and so moved to Zurich, and then, I thought a lot about what to do. I actually thought about going into the art world. I interviewed a ton of people that worked in galleries before I left New York. And I even set up like a little art, kind of somewhat of an art gallery to help sell my dad's work. And then I also thought about how to use my skills for good. And that's really what sparked interest. And that's really where I wanted to focus. But it just was a matter of figuring out how. And when I got to Switzerland, I realized the world of finance is not entrepreneurial. It is templated. It is focused on, privacy and doing things one way. And I genuinely felt that it wasn't a good fit for me. I didn't even really interview. I just kind of talked to people that worked in the industry, and I just didn't think it was the right place for my mindset to thrive. And so my husband, Human, and I looked at each other and we just thought, look, we've got great networks. We've got incredible skills. We're so lucky. We have tremendous gratitude for our lives and just what we've accumulated in terms of knowledge and to a certain extent, capital. And so why wait to retire and then do good? Why not start now? And so we decided to set up Beyond Capital in 2009 together and do it in a way where we could bring in our network. So we actually set it up as a nonprofit initially, and now we're in kind of our next phase of raising a for-profit fund. But the thinking around the timing was really critical. It was a very active decision to do it early on.
And so, what and the goals of this first company you guys started? Tell us about that. I mean, it was nonprofit originally. Tell us why, and what were your target markets, and how are you going to raise capital, and also grow capital for the purpose of giving.
We always wanted to use money as a force for good, and we wanted to use skill as a force for good, which is why we called Beyond Capital, because we wanted to provide more than money to seed stage entrepreneurs in 5 countries: India, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. These countries, we have kind of networks and family history. As I mentioned on my side, my husband also has family in Kenya. And they really are a place where decisions for us, a cup of coffee, maybe a new roof on our house, can really make a difference in the company's ability to grow and scale. And so we set up Beyond Capital as a nonprofit, though, because at that time, there was really a new wave of entrepreneurs that needed additional support. They needed services that could truly ameliorate their business models, such as pro bono legal or, pro bono advisory or coaching. They really needed access to better quality services. And as a nonprofit, we could truly attract that. We could do what I call ecosystem building and really help to better the companies and the level of entrepreneurship so that we could lay a foundation to then go out and raise a for-profit fund. And so what we've done over the past 11 years in the nonprofit structure is build a portfolio of companies that are improving the lives of individuals living at low incomes, but doing it sustainably. They're all businesses. They are all financially sustainable and have social impact or environmental impact baked into their business models. So there really hasn't been any trade-off. In fact, one of the companies, to give you an example, that we funded in India in the eye care space that we thought would be a little bit more concessionary because it operates in Assam, which is the northeastern region of the country near the Himalayas. It actually was the business that we doubled our money while improving access to 150,000 lives, to 150,000 people's access to eye care.
Wow, that's awesome.
27% IRR for us. And so I think we really selected our markets strategically, and it ended up paying off for us. Not in the sense of purely financial return, but also we know that our portfolio is impacting 5.9 million people, including 3.8 million women. And we know that every dollar we invest impacts 13 lives. And again, the thinking around the small decisions that we make here in the US or Europe can have such a big impact on the places where we are investing. And then overlaying the macroeconomic trends that are really compelling, such as mobile money prevalence. For example, Africa has the highest mobile money penetration in the world, and 900 million Indians are set to go cashless right now. There's also just internet proclivity and just the kind of access to technology that can help businesses truly grow and scale. We found that really compelling, and most of the companies in our current portfolio have used technology as a way to leverage their business models.
Sure. So basically your nonprofit, the goal is to be profitable, so your profits can then go back into nonprofits, right? Supporting these entrepreneurial endeavors all over the world in different markets you're in. Is that right?
Yeah. So you really can look at us as a venture fund that is evergreen. So actually, yeah, you're absolutely right in that we recycle the capital into the next enterprise, but it is an investment. So we have mostly equity stakes. We've done, convertible equity in the beginning, but mostly equity stakes, and we have made some loans to businesses. So we are always interfacing with for-profit enterprises, even though we've been a nonprofit. And over the years, in addition to funding the operational expenditure ourselves, as well as putting in some capital on our own, we've had a lot of exited entrepreneurs, next gen, rising gen, that fund us, family foundations as well. And then a very fascinating cohort of what we call ambassadors, who are professionals that keep a finger on the pulse of impact investing through our work and give us a small donation, $1,500 relative to others, but still a meaningful one, where they get access to an annual program of digital education around impact investing. And so our donor group has really been diversified over the years. And now we are looking to kind of even go farther in raising a $20 million venture fund.
So far, I mean, originally it was you and your husband, Human, is you pronounce it?
Human, yeah.
Human. Yeah, you two originally funded everything, and then raised capital, and continue to raise capital from how many different organizations support your nonprofit now today?
We've had a lot of individuals over the years, but a good cohort of kind of under 30 larger donors, and then we have over 50 ambassadors in 14 cities. And that's kind of viewed as a membership.
So larger donors are what, $1 million plus or a couple $100,000 plus, or what?
Yeah, they typically give us about $100,000 a year in a multi-year commitment.
Okay.
And we also have co-investors that co-invest with us in our deals. So typically our donors at a certain level have access to our deal flow. So for example, when we invest $100,000 in a young company, the other donors put in perhaps even $100,000 to fully match that.
That's cool. And so they have access to the investments you're diving into. Those are for-profit investments then, right? And then the original investments hopefully pay off for the nonprofit to grow the nonprofit beyond just the giving of these foundations, these family foundations, and all that. That's really cool. I love it. We have a family foundation as well that we started about 15 years ago. My wife and I started it, and it's it's mostly for communities that we serve in business, and we've got some great definitely some great impact we've seen from the participation our team has had in these other nonprofits. So it's a lot of fun. But I love the sustainability that you're creating within yours, right? Where ours is money going out, hopefully seeing the results and improved big impact communities. But I love things that are sustainable and constantly growing, so that you can keep on throwing more investment out there, right? So our growing is our companies, our 10 companies, and as we profit, we dedicate a certain percent of our profit to the foundation, and then and we have an outing every year that raises a little bit of money as well. But otherwise, it's mostly our success of our businesses provides success for the foundation, and then we hope we're investing in things that are sustainable in communities that we serve. But I love what you're doing. It's so cool to think that you have access to some really cool advisors. Probably as you're getting investors, you're probably surrounding these businesses with awesome advisors they could never normally afford, probably too, right?
Yeah, that's very true. So we actually have done things like install an interim COO on the ground for 2-3 weeks into a business in rural India. And actually in that same company, we have a Harvard medical trained doctor who's now advising that business during the time of COVID on how to get their consultations into the homes of the rural patients, because it's, people are terrified to leave their homes in India, and there is a social stigma around COVID as well.
Sure. So what communities or what markets or countries are you focused on right now, mostly?
Yeah, we only focus on 5 countries. It's a big market. So a big market sizing to invest in India, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. When we look at the number of people that are living in kind of basic and emerging consumer level, that's definitely over 1 billion people in these regions, and will grow over the next 10 years to about 1.7 billion when we account for population growth. So it's a lot. There's a lot of innovation, but there are actually a lot of synergies. In fact, last week we had a healthcare education company in our portfolio start to establish a presence and work in East Africa, just through one of their relationships. As you may know, there's a very large Indian diaspora in East Africa as well. So there's kind of just a cultural transfer of knowledge in many ways. But I think there's also a similarity in needs of kind of the needs of people who are living at basic and emerging levels. And really, at the end of the day, what we're investing in is access to basic goods and services. So we funded healthcare and agriculture and energy access, as well as banking the unbanked, financial inclusion and gainful employment. These and also sanitation. These are all sectors that are underserving people who might have a lower budget, but individuals who live under $15 a day have a budget to spend on these basic goods and services. In fact, people who earn less than $4 a day spend over 50% of their budget on basic goods and services. And so there is a market opportunity. It obviously has to be done very carefully with, higher volumes because the margins are thinner, and really figuring out how to reach consumers that are not always living in densely populated or urban areas, perhaps more peri-urban or even rural. But we've seen companies be successful in getting down to what we call the last mile.
It's amazing. We were in India for about a month last August, my wife and I, my son, and I couldn't believe the access they had to technology that I never would imagine, right? And these people, living on the type of income you're talking about, had connectivity that they never would have dreamed of, 6-7 years ago, I guess, right? Not to say that there's so much more that they need to gain, right, when it comes to connecting with the goods and services we have, and we're blessed to have in our country, right? But it's such a huge need, and I can't imagine how you have to think to serve this vast market, right? And if you're the responsible leader, I know you are, you probably drives you crazy as far as how much bigger you have to get to do what you want to do, right?
Well, I'm a patient leader, and I know that progress does take time, and success is a process. And so when we raise our $20 million fund, knowing that every dollar we're currently investing impacts 13 lives, we will reach 200 million people. And that's a number that I'm going to be very proud of.
Give me that number one more time, Eva.
So we know that every dollar we invest impacts 13 lives. And so on with our $20 million fund that we're currently raising, we expect to reach close to 200 million people. And then they're, using business as a force for good is a leverage effect. Not only are you providing eye care to somebody who doesn't have access to it in a sustainable business model, but then that allows them to work, and their family also is impacted positively by that. So I think that there's a way to kind of be able to see the work scale quite quickly, which is really exciting to me. And then just in terms of what do we pick? I get this question a lot, how do you decide what to focus on? Really, this comes down to the fact that we are a venture fund. Our chief investment officer is a venture partner and a venture lawyer. Every member of my investment team has an advanced degree, and most of them have MBAs except for me. And really our focus is on deal flow and understanding what we like and what we don't like about companies, and really zeroing in on businesses that are run by great teams, have unit economics that add up, still care about social impact, and are willing to measure it, because that's really key. And ultimately kind of create a whole package of a type of company that we think will be legitimate and viable and have a promise of social impact.
Awesome. So I in India, when I was in India, like you would probably do, I called a few YPOers that I knew there when I knew I was going to go there, and then from some of my friends in my forum had very, very strong friends in India as well. we were in Bangalore, and it was amazing how many YPOs from India called me after I just did a little reach out to them, flew into town to meet with me and all that. But I tell you, there's so much cool entrepreneurism going on there. I mean, I met with so many people that were doing really cool things, way beyond what I'd imagined. There's a company that I'm still kind of interested. I haven't really done a lot with them, but they basically have a very, very inexpensive test they can do by shooting the retina. Basically, you look in this little these lenses, and they tell you to look at the blue box, and where's it, kind of like an eye test almost, right? But while you're doing it, it's shooting pictures of your retina, and within seconds, it's got a full report of your chance of diabetes, your chance of all different diseases, and if you have anything currently, right? What's your health currently, and what's your odds of I think it was diabetes was one of the biggest things that it really understood. But they're trying to get this thing to where it's less than $1 per test, so that they can get it to the masses in India, because so many of these people don't have access, as you said before, to great healthcare, right? Or just understand. And part of the health problem is not knowing if you have something, right? They might be a little sick, but they think it could be dire. They can't do a test to understand. So just the testing alone is uplifting if they get through it and everything's good, right? Which most is the case probably. So just their well-being and their emotional well-being is so much better if they can get tested, to understand what's going on. Because right now they don't go get they don't get physicals like we do once a year or every other year or so. So anyway, it's a really cool technology and super fast results that they're driving the cost down to. So it's something that you may want to look at for the heck of it, because if they can accomplish what they think they are, it could be incredible. There's one other technology that I'm invested in. A good friend of mine, actually from Dallas. You ever heard of Gentry Beach? Gentry Beach is a YPO there. So yeah. Gentry's a friend of mine. He's on a board with me, and he was not a venture guy. He's a hedge fund guy. He's a hedge fund guy. Sold his business to Ken Griffin out of Chicago. Anyway, he became a board member of a nonprofit that I'm on. I became good friends with him. And I introduced him to another friend of mine who in India discovered a technology that's curing or improving at least cerebral palsy in a big way, Parkinson's disease in a big way, and many things, many issues of the brain, anything neuron related, right? And so anyway, Gentry, I introduced him to this product in this company because I was trying to help them get into America through the FDA. They're testing in the FDA, and Gentry not only helped with knowledge of how we need to do that, but he then became the president of this company. And this company is going to cure the lives of so many people. It's going to be incredible, right? Example is my son, Nick, who has cerebral palsy. Went from a D- student as a freshman, sophomore, junior to a B- student after 30 days in this technology, doing this stuff. It's called neurocytonics. Anyway, so this technology is coming to America eventually. They're doing double-blind tests in Mexico currently, and it's amazing technology. I saw so many unbelievable things. I saw Parkinson's disease minimized from a stage 3 Parkinson's to a stage 1. I saw just crazy stuff going on. I can go on and on with you. And he's actually one of our podcasts too, the scientist that is behind this. But bottom line is, it's another one that you might look at and say, hey, even invest or not invest, we are going to do some stuff, a bunch of stuff philanthropically to say, this thing for 30 days is like $50,000, but we're going to take a percentage of our patients will be people that don't have the money to do it, right? And we want to expand this thing to serve the world in a bigger way. So it's pretty cool stuff. And if you ever want to look at that, also it'd be fun. But I can imagine, things like this you get thrown at you on a constant basis, right? Really cool things that can solve so many problems, and you have to decide what are you going to invest in? Who's the team that decides? Okay, this is a great one. We got to invest in this and raise capital for it. Or boy, it's a good one, but we don't have enough, right? Who decides these things? So that's got to be a tough thing.
Yeah, it is. It is tough because there are a lot of really well-intentioned and passionate entrepreneurs that come to the table. Um, we decide as a group, it's myself, my chief investment officer, our director of due diligence, and our director of social impact, along with our investment associate, who's also in Bangalore. And so we have a team weekly call where we talk about deal flow. We're very lucky also to be underpinned by a few great interns that really care about the space and maybe are working in banking, but want to kind of like spend a couple hours on this per week. And so we're able to see a lot and discuss a lot. But ultimately, we decide kind of based on this confluence of factors. And some of it also just relates to the company's ability to scale, or the company's ability to reach the market that they say they're going to reach, as well as the way that we interact with them and the kind of the feeling of us being a partner for them in their investment round and in their company is also very, very important for us. And we've actually walked away from a few deals at not necessarily the 11th hour, but towards the end of the kind of negotiating process, because we have learned some things about management teams that maybe we felt we wouldn't be the right partner for them as a result of what we kind of learned about how their style of getting back to us, or whether they're coachable or not, and things like that.
So when you think about that, Eva, I look at you like you're kind of what you said. Your core values can't be too far off, right? I mean, you got to kind of align, right? Not perfectly, probably align with a lot of things. What are a few core values that you hold high, and that you believe that the people you invest in have to be close on, or you can coach them to be better and stronger at the core values you really believe in?
Yeah, I think the main one is just being a conscious leader and a servant leader. It really comes down to thinking about more than yourself. Like, in my opinion, the Machiavellian leader is really on the out. And that leadership style will not get us where we need to be as a human race on this planet. And so we really do look for leaders that kind of are trying to go beyond. Now, that is baked into the fact that they are social entrepreneurs, but you can still have people who are driven by significance or ego running social enterprises. And how we discern that comes down to what I would call the difference between abundance and scarcity. And so I do believe that you can kind of see the world through two lenses. One is, maybe more commonly said as the glass half full, but it goes beyond that. And the other is the glass half empty. But I think, I've been lucky to work with an executive coach since 2017. And I've learned a lot of this from her, and it is a muscle that you kind of can exercise. But really, we want to be invested in entrepreneurs that are that have the abundance mindset, that see possibility around them, that have hope for change. Because hope is a quality that is necessary for leadership. And we are seeing that more than ever now in the world that we're living in. And so, sure, all the hard and fast skills, they're very easy for us to analyze. Can you put your model together, or your projections? Do they make sense? How far off do we think they are? Are you able to kind of, turn everything around? Do you have the right team underneath you? But at the end of the day, I do believe that investing in entrepreneurs that have kind of a more abundant mindset, thinking about what is possible rather than what is not possible, and constantly negotiating and fighting, will yield greater results.
I love it. I mean, tell me this. I mean, with what you're doing, and you're around, through your network, lots of CEOs and leaders in business. How do you? Okay, for me, one of the best things that happened is we built a foundation, and the foundation, was because we didn't, we were very inconsistent on our giving, right? we gave a lot some years, and some years not a lot. And we had a year we gave a lot, and we lost a lot of money in our businesses, and we gave a lot, right? I was like, oh no, we shouldn't have gave that much away. We shouldn't invest that much in community. And it was my wife pretty much always pulling, saying, hey, we need to support this. Can I support this? I got on this board. Can I do this? And I was always, for sure, honey, yeah, whatever you want to do, babe. And a lot of times we had cash in the bank, but that didn't mean we were going to make money for the year. So eventually, through YPO, actually, my first years in YPO, I learned about how to manage in a socially responsible way what you do give, right, and how you can do it consistently. And it was through basically building your own foundation. And we weren't a very big company back then, right? But it was the best thing we ever did. Because my wife was always, we're Catholic, and my wife was always, you don't tell people when you give, because I'd be like, oh, cool. Hey, check out what we gave to last week, right? Or check out the difference we made over here. And she's like, you're not supposed to do that. That's not what we do as Catholics, Christians. You don't talk about it. You don't brag about it. I said, oh, honey, but I love talking about it. It's so cool, right? And she goes, well, you don't do that. That's just not, okay, well, we learned about corporate social responsibility, and there they tell you, you got to talk about it because you want to promote these things because you want other people to do the same. And you want your team members to be invested as well, right? So I was like, cool, yeah, we can kind of brag about it. And so we changed our mentality on first of all, the organized type of giving we did, right? And second of all, to talk about and be more focused on what we wanted to invest in, right? The things we thought were the causes we really believed in that we could spend time and talent and money on. So either way, it was awesome. And since then, we've got amazing team members that are heavily invested with their time, and heck, some of them their money as well. But we also have lots of our vendors that get involved in the same causes, right? And we've seen a bunch of companies that we've mentored to do their own foundations, whether they're a little $2 or $3 million company or they're a $200 or $300 million company. And it's cool because now they're focused. And what we realize is if we can invest every year a percentage of our profits, when we have that bad year, all right, we've got a sustainable organization now. We have that bad year. We've had them since we've been doing this, right? And yet we still have money to give on a consistent basis. And then we have the great years, and we throw a lot at it, and we have so it's been awesome in that it's been very consistent giving. It's like we don't sweat it. We have a bad year, we don't sweat it. We're still involved in giving and investing in these communities. So it's the best thing that we've done in our business probably. And I believe the money we spend in this, the money we invest in this, it pays off fivefold because we have better talent in our team that actually care. We have, as you said, servant-minded people that love the foundation and love the part of the giving part of our organization. So I just think that every business is crazy not to do it. Even if we have selfish leaders, which we probably don't know a lot. If we're friends with leaders in business, they're probably not selfish, or we probably wouldn't be very good friends with them. But even if you have somebody selfish as a CEO, right? If they do it just for the good of making more profit, in my opinion, if they do it right, it's a no-brainer. Every business, in my opinion, should have a philanthropic arm, whether it's a foundation or it's just a fund or whatever. Can you tell me about your thoughts on that, and if you've inspired people to do what you do as corporations?
I hope I've inspired. I hope I have, but I think I'm continually doing so. So I also have a podcast and an online magazine, and I am writing a book that will come out in the fall called The Good Your Money Can Do. But I'm always looking for the win-win too, Gary. Like it's very, very important to be able to find the ways to do well and do good at the same time. I do really believe in this same kind of values that you share, which are that if you are giving, giving is kind of a structure for success. And when you look at all of the leaders that, maybe we admire, and I speak for myself and just say, Warren Buffett and the Gateses, they give way more than they will actually keep for themselves. Mm-hmm. And they are extremely successful in everything that they do. And I see giving as a component of what I would call like a high performance lifestyle. It is an important aspect of being a CEO and being a leader and being a conscious leader. Being able to contribute beyond yourself is a really big part of that. That being said, I think I think the world needs to move more towards, this is not a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree with sharing and inspiring. I think that it's very important to set examples for what CSR or impact investing can look like and set templates so that others can follow the same. At the same time, I also do personally, when I give, try to make it as anonymous as possible. Because I am not actually giving for the purpose of having an outcome of recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't believe that when I give, it means that, I'm contributing to a system where somebody else receives and then, it's a net effect. Really, at the end of the day, I think that we're in an age where we can see expansion of social justice, social causes, the environment, healing the environment. And I would just encourage all leaders to not necessarily think of the world as I give and it takes away from me. Like you're doing, you're giving it no matter what year and what your bottom line is that year. I think that that's an incredible strategy and so inspiring for the change that we need to make in the world.
Yeah, I mean, and again, as leaders, as anybody that does a great job in building business, in my opinion, does it because they love serving somebody, right? I mean, you're serving so many communities and so many people, and you get a ton out of it. If you didn't, if you're one that just didn't get a lot out of it, you'd be doing something else. So when I look at business leadership and great entrepreneurs, right, they usually find they have a niche in serving a community that other people just didn't serve as well, right? And those are the people I love to be around and listen to, like yourself, where you're hearing a different market to be served, right? And you're very passionate about serving it, and you're serving at the biggest scale you possibly can. And then this is what, of course, Bill Gates has done in his business life. That's what so many of Steve Jobs. I mean, so many people, they figured out, okay, I'm having fun building this product, and man, how many people can I serve? And can I serve 10? Can I serve 1,000? Can I serve 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000? Right? And the more you can serve, you're going to be rewarded for it, right? And financially. And those same people are ones at one point in their lives, or maybe even from the beginning, they're saying, how can I serve others now and give away as much as I can? As you're saying, so many of these very successful people are giving away most everything they've ever had, all for the good of others worldwide or community-wide. And so whether you're a small business or a huge business, I think you're fulfilled a lot more when you're giving than getting. And when you think about that, I mean, even if our birthdays come around and we get some gifts, it's really awesome that somebody thinks of us, right? But when we can give, it feels a lot better to give somebody something than get something. And I think that feeling is something that we all know is true. How do we do it more and more as we become more successful, right? And your model is one that, gosh, I think that so many businesses maybe that don't have, either if they have foundations, can invest in yours, right? They don't have foundations, make yours the one they invest in, because it's awesome, it's inspiring, and especially if they could use their gifts, whatever those gifts are, right? For me, it's hillbilly dirty businesses. So if I was investing, you could use me for those. If somebody over in Tanzania wants to start a paving business, paving dirt roads over there, I'm your guy to come and be the advisor, right?
There are a lot of dirt roads.
There are a lot of dirt roads, right? And so either way, I have my expertise, and it's different than many, but it's pretty cool when you can you can find investors invest that you can also add value as advisors for you.
Yes.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes.
What's your vision now? Okay, so what do you look to accomplish next 5 years, 10 years?
Well, in the next 10 years, I hope when we speak in 2030, I can tell you that our portfolio reached 200 million people. That's definitely a goal that we've set out and mapped out and are being strategic about. I'm also very excited about the launch of my book because it meets a need that I think oddly has not been met. And to share just an informal survey that I've been doing with some of my peers of late, particularly in the moment of the pandemic, I've just been asking, executives that have built their businesses or sold them, or, been to business school or working in finance. What are you thinking now? Are you more inclined to think about your money as a force for good? And the answer is yes. Are you more inclined to think of your skills for good? And the answer is yes. And then, do you know where to get started? And the answer is no. And I think if we were to ask that across YPO, we would also get a similar kind of percentage of no's, and a very high percentage of no's that I'm seeing in this informal survey. And so my book really serves to speak to that audience. If you don't know where to get started, but you want to use your money as a force for good, I've created a guidebook. And so we'll see where that goes. I mean, maybe I'll get to do Oprah's soul conversations or super soul conversations or something like that. That would be a dream. But ultimately,
what's the name of the book going to be?
The Good Your Money Can Do, Becoming a Conscious Investor.
Good.
And, and similarly with my online magazine, it is something I'm looking to grow and scale. And obviously, I believe success is a process. So I'll, raise the venture fund, launch the book, and then kind of take that to the next level. But we're really shedding light on impact investing from different angles. So, for example, today we're discussing an article on the restaurant industry and how there is a tremendous amount of inequality in the restaurant industry. And I think you and I, Gary, deeply would be appalled if we sat in a restaurant and actually thought about what the people behind the scenes were earning and how they were being treated. And we kind of know that, they're earning the minimum wage and getting bonuses. But when the coronavirus pandemic hit, it really exposed the inequality in that system. And so on The Conscious Investor, we're trying to shed light on areas where people can have an impact with their actions.
Sure.
And that's what I like to do.
I love it. This is so awesome. I would love to follow up a little bit of follow up too, if we could get that out of you, because I want a little more time with you if I can. If you give that to us in the next
anytime,
week or two, whatever. Let's figure that out, because there's some other things I want to talk to you about that you and I can engage YPO in. Something to do with today's challenge we have, right? With our the racial divide and things that I believe YPO, with the leadership we have, can help in a big way in this problem.
Yes.
I've got an idea and basically a format that I'm building in the Chicago market that can be built everywhere. And it's basically partnering with some Black business leadership groups that I'm friends with, to engage with them through YPO. So I'm probably a little naive, but my success has been exclusively through mentoring with great entrepreneurs from the time I was a kid to who I am today. Like yourself, I'm learning a lot from you right now, right? And so for me, I'm very, very conscious of aspirational leadership and mentoring, and I know in my heart that if we as leaders that have been blessed with so much can just give time and share experiences with the people that want it, right? Only if they want it, whether they're kids and they're 17 years old or they're adults and they're 25 or 35 years old, right? I'm confident that the talent we have in YPO, and maybe it's only 5 or 10% per market, can do an amazing job helping to inspire entrepreneurship. And I believe entrepreneurship cures many things. I look at the great country of Israel that I visited, so far a couple times and loved it because I see so much hope there and so much strength there, and in their drive for great entrepreneurship that's cured so many problems. I just think that our inner cities, our urban communities, can be improved. Nothing's ever been perfect, unfortunately, in any of our communities, but can be improved drastically if there's more, what you mentioned earlier, hope, right? If there's more hope and more aspiration, and somebody putting an arm around anybody that wants it, right? Anybody that wants it, here's a person that will help, or a couple of people that will help to show you the way when it comes to entrepreneurship. And not just show you the way. If I like who you're about, I'm going to introduce you to people that I think can help business and bring business to you. So anyway, it's something I've been talking about for the last few days with a couple leaders in our community, and I think it can be built. So I'm gonna come after you about that as well.
Sounds good. You should do it. And as Brian Stevenson says, he's a civil rights lawyer that I really admire, we have to get proximate to the challenges. We have to change the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have hope, and we have to be uncomfortable a little bit. And I think that, everything you just said, I think touches on those areas, and would love to be supportive.
Okay, so I'm going to say, Robbie, you got any questions for our all-star here, Eva?
I do. I have about 40. Full transparency. I've been driving this whole time, so I've been in and out of traffic, and I didn't feel fully comfortable to jump in. But I do have one today, and I'm glad that you are willing to offer your time for another interview. But I also kind of felt like a listener today, so I know listeners are going to find a lot of value in this, and I know I personally have so far. The one personally that I do have today is one of my best friends that I worked with while I was at LinkedIn. Actually decided to leave LinkedIn after about 2 years and start a company called Isuzu. And Isuzu is, to my understanding, the ideology of pooling money in Africa as a family and creating that familial wealth to hopefully bring the future generations ultimately to either America or maybe it's another country around the world that ultimately helps leverage generational wealth and grow over time. And so the way that they do that is they implemented a similar system actually through an app, and the app pools the money together. And then through that process, they actually grab rental history and provide a credit score for those that currently don't have the ability to access credit, so that they can then leverage that to grow wealth over time. And I think that part of the idea for that company came through his time at LinkedIn. And Jeff Weiner obviously constantly speaks about compassionate leadership and the impact that a mission and vision have on a company. And LinkedIn is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And that was a mission and vision that everyone can stand behind. And through that process, you're more motivated because you know that your role isn't just working on LinkedIn's network and helping connect one member to another. It's that you actually have an impact on the bottom line of really humanity. So really the question that I have today, and I have plenty more for the future, is when I'm thinking through companies that have been positioned one way or another for the longest period of time now, shifting their vision of the company and aligning more socially is extremely challenging. And I guess I'm interested if you have a framework or a methodology around how to go through that brainstorming session as a business. And it sounds like it's directly in line with your book. But I do think that just aligning the vision of the business so that all decisions are rooted in the social impact has a large value to be had. I guess I'd be interested in your perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really think that a theory of change can help companies to truly zero in on where they want to have an impact. I think even starting small, so to speak, or with one particular mission is more noble than kind of trying to do everything at once. And so my book is more geared towards people that want to use their money as a force for good rather than business. But through my podcast of interviewing purpose-driven leaders, I see a tremendous amount of just deep intention for in the entrepreneurial community that has been using their business as a force for good for decades. And I think it really starts there with that core belief in, one particular area, which can then, be built out. Also, maybe looking at some of the things that are that are actually more obvious, because those are sometimes the things that we discount. So for example, what is the local community that you're operating in? What are some of the core challenges there that maybe your business can help to solve? A friend of mine runs a COVID testing business, and they've extended COVID testing at very, very low cost to nonprofit groups that work with disadvantaged children in Dallas, and really kind of just went local. And I do think that supporting local is a very good first step. on top of that, then you can start to be strategic with the business model and the different directions that you might want to go, and maybe think about the supply chain and how the supply chain can be more sustainable of a company. But it sounds like your former colleague's business also has impact baked into the business model from the start. And that's, of course, a great way to see that kind of impact be hand in hand, and hopefully not need to express a trade-off for one or the other. So there are a number of ways to go about it. And honestly, I think the other way, and we're seeing this more and more now, is just change the diversity of the leadership. Because when there are different voices around the table, there will be different solutions and perspectives and even different problems that need to be addressed. And so I believe, as the kind of Margaret Mead quote, to never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. And I think that bringing that leadership and the boardroom is a really important place to start.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We at LinkedIn, we had a program called DIBS, which stood for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Yeah, it for sure transcended across the entire organization.
Awesome. I'll tell you what, I want to get more on it, Eva, if we can, maybe another half hour. And I apologize that I'm short on time, and I know you got to take through. So if you're okay with that, I want to follow up, and we'll confuse people. We'll wear something different, and we'll look a little different, and we'll split it in two, 2/3 of the third, maybe, if that's okay. Because I really want to. I mean, your story, I know, inspires so many people, and I know you're doing that with your relationships in YPO now, to think beyond, what profits could do, not just for themselves, their teammates, their investors, their stockholders, but for the community. And there's a big subject that I love to talk about when I can, and some people, I think, change the way they think instead of just writing a check once in a while for things that they actually, get engaged in. And able to build something sustainable on their own, or invest in things like you're doing, Eva. So I want to talk a little more about it if we could. And
sounds good.
And so I appreciate your time today, and I can't wait for your book to come out too. When's it coming out?
Should be October. I'm in the editing phase, and there's a lot that comes after that. So It's definitely a process. But yes, would love to reconnect. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Eva, so much. You're awesome, and I can't wait to meet you sometime as well. Thank you.
Be safe. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye now.